The formal opening, as I said, pomp and ceremony for the 48th Parliament. Not a lot of work got done. That happens tomorrow. The big test will be, of course, when Labor's legislative agenda gets underway. We'll also get a question time tomorrow. And joining me, someone who is there and can't wait for all of that, Sky's Political Editor Andrew Clennell. Well, welcome back, mate. Good to have you on the program. I mean, this graphic in the Oz today that really illustrates that the House is a sea of red. I mean, this is extraordinary. And having been there after an election loss, it's pretty sobering to walk into the chamber and have that confront you. I mean, this is going to be the reckoning for the Libs. Give me a sense of how you think they're going to move on from the shellacking they got back in May. But hubris, I reckon that's a lesson for Labor too, Andrew.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case, and there'll be a bit of fun poked at them. But the government's got enough serious issues to grapple with that they won't be able to do that for too long, I don't think, Peter. And I think there's enough ammunition there, suggestions that Jim Chalmers wants to look at various taxes, the difficulties with the US relationship. There is just enough there for the opposition to work with. And look, I've seen this before. I covered the New South Wales Parliament after the infamous Christina Keneally 2011 result, after the Obeid scandals, etc. There were 20 Labor members of that Parliament, and there were probably close to 70 a coalition. On this occasion, we got something like 94 to 43, but significantly 94 Labor to just 28 Liberals. But I think what you'll see as time goes on, we'll get used to these great numbers after the initial shock of it, and it'll be the issues that are tested. And there's always challenges for federal governments, and there certainly are for this government. So, you know, it's going to be one-sided in the chamber, but a lot of it's down to how vocal your side is too. And I don't know if the government was ever that vocal behind Albanese and Chalmers in the last Parliament. I'll be interested to see how the new members go with that tomorrow.
You make a really good point. I used to always say to our guys that it's tone. You know, tone is everything. If you are well up front, if you're winning the polls, if you've got a lot of people on your government benches, you need to take that with a bit of humility. If you look like it's a lark, that comes through at 6 o'clock at night. People don't at home get the joke that prompted the sort of the skylarking in the chamber. You just look like you're a rabble. You mentioned taxes there. This will be interesting for Susan Lee, right? Much has been made of the fact that she's got sort of tax background, she's got some economic degrees, but she's been in the Parliament for 24 years. She's never really had an economic portfolio. She's never sort of been in the thrust and parry of the economic debate. She can't just leave that to the shadow treasurer. As leader, particularly on the Conservative side of politics, she's really got to have her own economic narrative. She's got to get out there on these economic issues. I'm going to certainly watch that this week. And we've got obviously this talk now that there'll be more and more taxes on the table for the summit. How's this going to play out?
Well, I wish I could tell you. I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm trying to interview all these senior people in government to try and establish what their game is, and I'm yet to get an answer. They're about tax reform, but they don't want to look at the GST versus income tax. They say they don't want to look at mining tax. The only area where I think that they are sort of opening the door is superannuation tax. But then they say, look, everyone's got to agree or we won't do anything. So are they fair dinkum about any of this? And we saw, you know, the Jobs and Skills Summit where after that they gave a whole lot of IR wins to the unions. And that's been, a source of cynicism as we go into this process.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
I do sometimes
that's
wonder.
A comment today from Qantas.
But I do sometimes wonder
that it was all preordained.
Some of this isn't some of this is Anthony Albanese saying to Jim Chalmers, well, if you want reform, go and get consensus and go and make the case. I do wonder that because Chalmers is said to be keener on it, and we know before he was very keen on negative gearing and capital gains changes, which were very unpopular. So is this a win the PM's giving him to say, well, if you can achieve it, achieve it. If you can't, bad luck, mate. I think that whole dynamic between the Prime Minister and Treasurer aroused a lot of interest in the last term and does again. And look, the one thing they absolutely must do when we're all talking about the budget situation and people are dreaming up tax ideas to fix it is cut the spending on the NDIS. And the Prime Minister said as much in an interview with me for Sky's Economic Summit. Actually said, no, I'm not happy with, 1 in 7 boys or whatever it is at the age of 10 being on the NDIS. It's madness. So that's the number one area of reform in my book. Let's see what else they're up for when they're not really, when they don't sound like they're up for much.
Well, he's got to get his hands dirty, the Prime Minister, because any time there's been any major reform in our country, the Prime Minister's had as much ownership of it and led the ERC table as much as any Treasurer has, and he sort of absents himself from the economic debate. He sort of absents himself from the national security debate too, Anthony Albanese, so we'll see what happens there. Hey, a good interview today with you and Penny Wong. I'll play something from it, but I'll pose the question. I mean, I'm keen to know how much of the China trip is playing out in Canberra at the moment, but let's have a listen to what she said.
In terms of the United States, they are our ally. We are their ally. They are our principal strategic partner. They're also the largest investor, our largest investment partner. None of that none of that changes.
So 2 things here. A lot of criticism over the weekend. That was for 6 days in China, which is a huge use of the Prime Minister's time. Not a lot of gains. And the second one was just this constant now pitting of China and the United States and Australia sort of piggy in the middle into the whole will he or won't he and when will he have this meeting with Trump?
Yeah, and I think the short answer to that's the Quad meeting in September, or we have a real problem. But that's, still a couple of months off. And I thought, yeah, she was really keen not to offend the Americans in that interview, wasn't she? Which is telling and, frankly, a little bit reassuring.
I agree.
Because the Prime Minister's language is kind of a bit like, oh, well, we need to, broaden things and get on well with China as well. I mean, he's obviously saying the US is important, but I do feel that he was a bit disappointed, to say the least. He never met Donald Trump at that G7 meeting, and we just don't need this relationship to slide at all, particularly with Kevin Rudd in the mix there, who's unfortunately said these things about Trump in the past. So I was a little bit reassured that Penny Wong seems to have good relations with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, from what she said. And she said they're our principal strategic partner. There's none of this, they're both important to us. She says, the grab you played, they're the principal strategic partner, fuel.
Wow. It's only taken them 3 or 4 years to wake up, but let's see if that holds. Andrew Clennell, thank you.